Let's get started with our first panel discussion for today, redefining the role of women in our society. Throughout history, the central role of women in society has ensured the stability, progress, and long-term development of communities and nations. Yet, women often find themselves caught in a convoluted web and at the short end of the stick. The pathways of their progress are riddled with biases, both conscious and unconscious, discrimination, and various other obstacles. In 2015, world leaders placed gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls at the heart of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Because empowering women and girls is a priceless investment that can change the world. Furthermore, when women have a direct voice in influencing the matters that concern them or affect their interests in any manner, it will lead to a world which has equal opportunities and rights to offer to every gender for real. Now the time has come to have a global vision to celebrate innovative and extraordinary women and create a global community that's an active force in social, economic, and cultural development of nations. With a mission to reposition women for high performance, improved leadership, and strong participation across all sectors of the society. And to talk more about this topic, I would like to invite our moderator for today, Divya Anand. Divya is a marketing and strategic communications leader with extensive experience across B2B and B2C brands. Having worked across different cultures and teams to deliver to the corporate mandate and regional imperatives, Divya is a true change agent. Based in Singapore, she's currently the general manager of marketing at Tata Communications Asia Pacific. Divya is also co-authoring her first book, My Voice, Volume 6, to be released in Jan 2023, which I'm sure is going to become an Amazon #1 bestseller too. For those of you who would like to find out more about her and connect with her, we've shared her LinkedIn details on the chat. And with that, over to you, Divya.
Thank you so much, Neera. That was very, very kind of you. But having said this, thank you very much for having me on the panel. Shikha, who's worked so tirelessly in the background, thank you very much for reaching out to me and for this fabulous opportunity, not least because it's one of my favorite topics. I hail from a matrilineal society where women inherit the earth. So for me, patriarchy and the systems that surround it are slightly to be questioned and challenged. Gender equality is not just a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. There has been progress over the last decade, but the world has not seen enough, has not heard enough. So here we are today, joined by an extremely accomplished list of panelists, talking about how we can all chime in to actually redesign our roles in society. While there is absolutely no simple fix for some of the problems that are being aggravated by an extremely lopsided structure, we do need to pivot urgently to enable and empower millions of women worldwide to not only adapt, but also build solutions alongside and participate in this dialogue. So I'm going to call upon my panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit of why this topic is so important to them. Do you want to start? Can I call upon Princess to start first? Sorry, Kelly, do you want to go first?
Of course, certainly. Welcome to everyone joining us today, and thank you, Divya. And as I was listening to Neera's introduction as well as yours, I thought, oh my goodness, right? We could spend all day together today to talk about the positive movement and using our voices. I am Kelly Kuhn. I spent 30 plus years in the travel management space, both in commercial and government opportunities. I live in London now. I spent 5 years in Singapore, missing it terribly as it's winter now and cold. And I originally from the United States. So I feel I have an interesting perspective in the role of women in so many different cultures and so many different environments around the world. And as I said, in travel management, servicing clients and corporations in every industry, everywhere. And so it's been a fascinating journey for me in my career and in my life to have these experiences and to really hopefully be able to share a bit today about what matters, I think, for the future and how we all, even though the challenge is hard, can make an impact in the future direction that women and society has. Divya, I think you're still muted.
My bad. Thank you very much, Kelly. Could I please ask you to pass the baton on to Dr. Noura?
Indeed.
Noura, I think you're on mute. I'm still on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm terribly sorry. My laptop, just froze down, and I don't know what's going on. And I think I'm accessing my friend's Zoom instead of mine. I'm terribly sorry.
No, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah. Well, let me introduce myself briefly to figure out this technical issue. And well, my name is Noura Al-Ubaidli. I'm a research fellow at Humanities in New York University in Abu Dhabi. And it's such a pleasure to have this opportunity today to speak to all the participants at my Voice Global Forum here, to share my experience and my field of study in which I examine feminism and the role of patriarchy and tribalism in the Arab Gulf region.
Thank you so much. And it's fine if you want to be Susan today, we'd be happy to be Susan.
Sorry, that's Susan's account.
No, that's fine. And Susan's very welcome as well. Mukta, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Divya. Hello, everyone. My name is Mukta Arya. I am the Chief Human Resource Officer for Societe Generale, which is a French investment bank in Asia Pacific. I have been with the bank for 16 years, and I have lived and worked in India, in Hong Kong, and in Singapore. For me, this topic is really important because in the corporate world, we have been working on gender balance for a long time, and especially in financial services, we do see that the balance is really far from what we want to achieve, So for me, I've been a great supporter of this cause and also working towards a lot in our bank, but also with other institutions across Asia Pacific to really, find some way to get to gender parity. And it is extremely difficult, but we are still continuing to do it. So for me, it's really close to my heart, and that's why I'm here. So thank you, Divya.
No, thank you so much, Mukta. That's really, really helpful because I think that makes us slightly maverick, this, all of us on this panel, and perhaps brave as well. Princess, could we please have you?
Thank you very much, Divya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everyone from different parts of the world you're joining this conference. My name is Princess Mwakego Ibrahim Pam. I'm the founder and chairperson of the Expert Professional and Business Women's Network International. It's a platform for women. It started off as a platform for expatriate spouses who trail their spouses around the world. We're into human career development for women, empowerment, financial independence. We've been in existence for the past 10 years. And apart from being a social entrepreneur, I'm also a speech therapist. I'm also the lead consultant at the EPBWN Consultant International. We work with the African Development Bank in trying to create a network for the women in the bank. We also work with international organizations, banks, embassies, and local government in every country that we have chapters. It's been my pleasure to be part of this discussion since it's been the mainstream of my work for the past 20 years, empowering women, creating waves of change in terms of their personal development and career development. So I'm looking forward to sharing and hearing other women share the impacts they've had in the different parts of the world concerning women. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to all the other panelists. My pleasure to share the stage with you.
Thank you very much, Princess. You know, sometimes I always, I was wondering the other day when I was writing about this, and I said, you know, how terribly off can anyone get with a name like Princess? It's like totally spot on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, and thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts and a little bit about yourself. And this is what I find extremely uplifting, that all of us in our own ways have chimed in to the cause and have helped move the needle along. But I really want to go back to this point where we've all spoken about the need for bold change, bold policies for affecting gender equitable recovery. In more ways than one, the pandemic has made us move 5 steps backwards, especially with women in particular. But how? You know, some people have said that we're looking at a she-cession more than a recession. And what does this mean? Have job losses affected women more than men? Does that impact women's choices? Or are women happy and comfortable with living this life that perhaps is more becoming of them? Princess raised a really good point when we were talking about this, and she said, some women are just comfortable not being in the corporate sphere because that's what their choice is. Now, this is what I want to bring to the conversation, and I'm going to start with Princess. Princess, why, how do we therefore allow for people to be comfortable in their skin, in their color, and still chime in to the conversation of equitable recovery?
Thank you very much for that question. I would like to start this discussion with a quote from Dr. Gita Sahu, who said in her article, "The role of women in the development of society." She said, "A woman in any society is a mirror of that society. If she is oppressed, that society is oppressed. If she is educated, that society is educated. If she is empowered, that society is empowered. A woman is like an atom of society, without whom there would be nothing." The magic word woman is very powerful. It has a certain charm. It is a reflection of love, care, nurture, responsibilities, duties, power, eternity, motherhood. Traditionally, women were considered to be full-time homemakers. Their responsibilities were to take care of their children and family. They didn't have any role in the household any. Over the years, the roles of women have changed. To answer that question, I want to say that I would take myself as an example. I am an African woman, and traditionally, we are expected, our main role is to take care of the home and to take care of our husbands. And as the years went by, as education came into Africa and women started discovering their voice, we started changing our perception of who we want to be. But generally in Africa, women are still seen as homemakers, and they feel more entitled to that role in some ways, and are not willing to let go of that role. But at the same time, they also want to have a voice at the table. There's something my mom said to me, that even your upbringing to an extent has an impact on you. But when you go into the society, what your eyes sees also has a huge impact on you. And that is why when we talk about nurture or environment, you see there's a struggle in a woman to either stick to what she's familiar with, tradition, or go after what her eyes and her ears are seeing in society, to be part of that wave of change happening in society. So from my own experience, when I was making babies, I was comfortable being a housewife. But when I got to a point when I knew the kids were now comfortable, I started having the urge to discover myself. And so I knew I wanted to add my voice to the society. So for a woman, it's an individual choice, like we were discussing before the panel, that there are women who are just comfortable being women, going to salon, taking care of their children, cooking for their husband, cleaning their homes. And at the same time, is as powerful as the CEO in an office. Like the quote has said, we are the turning wheel of society. It doesn't matter where a woman is placed. Her role is so vital, so powerful, it changes lives. So that is why during our pre-discussion, I brought up the issue of women should not be pressurized to all be in the boardroom. Their rooms, their living rooms are also their boardrooms. Their kitchens are also their boardrooms. So we should create this wave of change, of empowerment that allows women to be great in wherever they find themselves. So dear, all I'm saying is that women are powerful. It doesn't matter if they find themselves in the boardroom. It doesn't matter if they find themselves in the kitchen. It doesn't matter if they find themselves in an outside activity. Just being a woman in a society is a great asset to a nation. So my personal experience is that I want to be part of the boardroom. I also want to be a mother. I also want to be a wife. What says that you can't have it all? Because I'm a woman, does that mean I should be excluded from being in the boardroom if it's my choice? No, I have a right to be in the boardroom as any male counterpart should be in the boardroom. And there's nothing stopping a man from choosing to be a house husband if he so wishes. So when we talk about this paradigm and this mindset, we should not exclude our male counterpart. They are our husbands, they are our brothers, they are our fathers. You know, there are kids who are brought up by their fathers because their mothers are the ones working. So we should look at this topic from both sides. Choices. A woman should be given the free choice to do what she wants and how she wants it without being judged, without being excluded. Is the tint of exclusion that makes the women fight. If the women knew that the choices are all theirs, and if they decide to go to the boardroom, the opportunities are available to them, there'll be less confrontation, there'll be less feminism in the way women go after their choices. And it's also fine if I decide just to be a leisured woman, enjoying my husband's money and having the comfort of my children. So it's so important as a woman, as much as we want to be financially independent, as much as we want to be in the boardroom, we must be considerate to our family members, our husbands, our children, and extended family, how our decisions affect them. Above all, a woman needs to be happy. In all the choices that we make, are we happy? Or are we following the trend? Are we being peer pressured to be like colleagues? My friend is the CEO, so I have to be a CEO. My friend is a founder, I have to be a founder. So in everything that we do, we must have that passion, the innate passion, so that we achieve the goals in which we are pursuing. And if we don't have that innate passion for what we're doing, that is when it becomes a struggle, and we get easily burnt out, and we do not get to where we are supposed to be. So as we discuss the role of women changing in society, all I'm saying is that the roles are not actually changing. The roles are being materialized. The roles have always been there. But for many years, we stepped back. And now we're stepping forward to pick up those roles that we should have done so many years ago. So the opportunities are there for us, but the choices are ours. We must do things that makes us happy. We must do things that empower others, and we must be women, powerful women, no matter where you find yourself. Thank you.
Divya, you're on mute again.
You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I'm saying thank you very much, Princess. You seem to resonate with everybody on the webinar. Free choice, yes, 100% agree. And I think that, you know, you've raised very pertinent points in that quick 2-minute conversation. Nature versus nurture. It's one of those big ones that all of us have had to work with and build for. And I think that is so important. You know, we've always said you sow as you reap. But what does that really mean, right? I'd really like to call upon Dr. Noura to add her input here, because she's not only pursuing feminism, but she's also a woman in the Middle East who's now, you know, crossing borders to try and build for a future that is unique. Dr. Noura.
Thank you, Divya. Well, based on my research and you know, my background and understanding and trying to unpack the layers of how women identify themselves and their you know, environment in the Arab Gulf states and the Emirates in particular, especially economically during the pandemic, I would say that in the case of female Emiratis and their contributions towards the fight against the COVID pandemic, I think that they were and remain empowered by the following actions. We have education via government empowerment, in which women obtained easy access without discrimination, and the literacy rate among Emirati women became 95.8%. In addition, we've got the training via dominance in the healthcare and educational professions, awareness raising via changing attitudes of patriarchy, and a sense of patriotism that was quite evident in the past 2 years and contributed to the prosperity of the economy and women's significant contribution as frontline forces in the healthcare sector, virtual educators in such a challenging times, humanitarians, and not to forget to mention as leaders in the international scene, especially in organizing the Expo 2020 exhibition last year, in which 60% of the core team comprises of Emirati leaders. And so I think when you mention she session and, you know, how to catalyze and what sort of actions, I would say that it's very backed by the state, and women have really been empowered in the past 2 years.
No, thank you. And I fully agree with you. I've been closely following up the Dubai Expo 2020, and while it's a great testament to the effort and the regional prowess, I think it's also very heartening to see a lot of women leaders as part of that story and that narrative that's emanating out of that region. Thank you very much. Mukta, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
So maybe I'll look at it from a corporate point of view. So
Sure.
during the pandemic, as you know, most of and all the organizations were forced to be more flexible. And I think it really helped our women employees quite a lot, because whatever you say in APAC, women are still the primary caregiver, you know, so they, even if they're working in senior positions, they still have to handle the household things, the children, etc. So I think this really helped them, the flexibility of working from home, even though there was a lot of pain related to homeschooling. But we did a focus group on the women employees in our organization across Asia, and they told us that this is one of the best thing that had come out of pandemic, you know. We did see, of course, a lot of women, we didn't have any people losing their job during the pandemic, so which was a good thing. We also found that women employees, they actually, like how Princess said, they wanted to have it all, you know. So They want to be mothers, they want to be, sisters, they want to be daughter-in-laws, but they also wanted to be great professionals, grow in their career. We also found during the pandemic that the ambition that women have, it actually came to the fore. I had so many women who were talking about their careers much more than what it was before, because I think this pandemic also gave time for people to think about what is it that they want to do in life, the priorities in life, what is their purpose in life, etc. And I did see that the ambition was coming to fore. Now, of course, the challenge is how do we actually help them to reach all their expectations or find ways, for them to grow, etc. For me, I think pandemic also had some positive signs, especially for women employees, especially in our sector, so I'm talking from what I saw in my organization and across financial services. So a positive twist on the C session that you were talking about.
No, thank you very, very much. Before I pass the baton to Kelly, there's a question here which is a natural segue to what you've just said, Mukta. A lot of women decided to come back and stay put in the corporate workforce. But here's a question by Julia Richards, and she's asking Princess, what would you advise women coming back to work after extended maternity breaks? How do you communicate your career break to potential employers and cope with the loss of confidence caused by being out of work? I think while Princess answers this, I'd also love to hear Mukta's thoughts on this.
Yeah, I have some things I want to share later. Yeah.
Yes. Princess, please.
Okay, I was just typing my answer to the question. Funny enough, I just answered that question in a different forum. And we decided, as a woman, when you go on maternity leave, the first thing you do is to make sure that your office knows that you are still interested in your job. Don't see maternity leave as an opportunity just to put everything about work to a corner. And that is the first link you have with your confidence with your job. Because what happens to women when they go on maternity leave is that they kind of say, oh, now I'm at home, let me concentrate more at home, and they leave everything about the office. So after 3 months, they're going back to the office. Everything seems strange. They don't know what has gone on. They have no communication with the office. They've not been informed of the new changes. They don't know the new staff member that have been employed. But in my answer, I said the first thing to do to build your confidence during maternity break, you have to keep in touch with your office. Make sure they don't forget your usefulness while at work. Let them know that you are available to help if there are anything you can do from home. Ask questions. Always remember to send a happy birthday to your colleague. Be part of the office while you're not in the office so that you resonate with them. You're not out of their, even though you're out of their sight, you're not out of their head. They know that we have a colleague. She's just on maternity leave. She's not gone, and sometimes when you go on maternity leave, remember that they bring a replacement. You're not just leaving your desk empty. There's somebody that is brought in to do your job. So when you're on maternity breaks, get to know who the replacement is. Always extend help to her. I know that at my table, I left a lot of things undone. How are you coping? Do you need any help there? Keep that communication going so that once your maternity leave is over and you're going back to the office knew that you were on maternity leave, but you were present and they are happy to have you back, and that your employer sees you as somebody who is active and somebody who knows that she loves her job and you want to keep your job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Princess. I think that was fabulous. That was absolutely fabulous. Mukta.
Yeah, so from an organization perspective, we are paying much more attention, and I know that a lot of organizations are paying attention to women who come back from maternity leave, to support them. Actually, we have, for example, maternity coaching, which starts before they go on maternity leave, so that the manager understands, the spouse and the person, they all understand what is going to happen, because there are changes in the life of somebody. So before, during, and after maternity coaching, which is of course an investment for any organization, but I think it's worth it because the employees are worth it. That is one. The second, if there is an extended maternity break, we actually launched a program called Returnship for not only women, but also men who have been out of, for example, corporate world for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So last year we launched it, and we had actually number of people whom we supported through an organization, in Singapore, actually called Moms at Work, who were helping them to integrate into the work environment, because what the question asked, about the lack of confidence is quite real. So with the help of the coach from Moms at Work, plus the managers, we really gave them a 6-month kind of, support to get integrated into the corporate world back. Again, understand how it works, what are the email systems, etc. Because, when you're out of work for 8 years and you do not know, what is a new thing here, you have different generations which are there. And I think, and we have actually converted out of the 7 people that we took, 4 people into permanent positions. It is really very acceptable nowadays. So if you think that the organization will not understand the career break, I would like to say that most of the organizations are now, quite understanding of why people take career break for a variety of reasons. And when you come back, I think they will really understand. The thing is that you need to be, of course, out in the forefront looking for things and trying to say, what is it that you can bring to the table? And organizations are really willing to help. I mean, we are trying that, and we are trying to be, of course, be more patient and to say that people who come back after a career break will not be immediately running from day one. So we do need to give them that integration period, which could range from 3 months to 6 months to 9 months. But I think the openness is there now. So I hope I answered the question, but we are very open about it. It's not easy, but it can be done, and it is happening in many organizations across APAC.
No, thank you very much, Mukta. In fact, the Tata Group has a second career program that is skewed only for women who want to come back from their maternity break. I think that is a huge percentage of the population today who we've recognized as having tasted life in the workforce, but looking to not come back for a couple of years because they choose to put their family before workforce at that point in time. And then recognize later that it is a marathon and not a sprint, and want to come back. And I think that is so important. And again, like you said, transition time is imperative. You've got to get your head wrapped around the fact that you do have a baby and you want to go back to work. It isn't a button that switches on and off. Having been there myself, I speak from experience. So it isn't the simplest thing to do, like Mukta again said, but the important thing to do is one day at a time, and remind yourself that it is a marathon, it is not a sprint. And have your managers on side, have people on side. You're going to need a mentor, you're going to need a friend at work, and you're going to need a sponsor at work. Very, very important. But that again leads us to Kelly, who comes in from the travel world, and that is one of the hardest hit during the pandemic. I'd love to know how that panned out from your perspective, Kelly. What do you think, what impacted women the most?
Thank you. Yeah, this conversation is pretty extraordinary, and I draw so many correlations between women taking breaks during their careers, whether it be for maternity or caregiving, et cetera, at any point in the past decades. And now we all had to look at that question so intently during the pandemic. The travel sector was impacted so significantly, where many companies were having their best years ever in 2019, and it literally went to zero by March of 2020. And so, using the furlough programs and so much job loss so quickly impacted our sector, which is very, very many women leading in the travel sector. And so this discussion about how to now come back is one of the biggest challenges to recovery, in that everyone's asking, where did all the employees go? Why are the airports around the world struggling with staffing? Why are the airlines? Why are travel companies? where did all of the employees go? And in many cases, that is women, young women, middle, older women. It is women more generally. And I had the wonderful pleasure, I shared with all of you, to hear Debbie Hewitt speak. She is the first female leader of England football, which is remarkable to say out loud. One, that she's in the role, but two, that she's the first. And she said so beautifully recently, if we do not get women back to the workforce, economies will not survive. The travel sector, the hospitality sector will not recover. Such a powerful statement. And so this notion of how do you explain a break? Well, it's exactly the same coming out of the pandemic, because so many women identify as a caregiver, whether that be for their children, their parents, whomever in their community, they are a caregiver. And so the sector is really working hard to build in now flexibility. And this question of what does return to work look like? What does the working environment look like? And I think many sectors, this correlates across many sectors, to how do we build in agility and flexibility to attract employees and men and women to come back to work. And I'll ask a few questions maybe that we all have to consider in our leadership roles. And I was one of those women, quite honestly. I made the decision to leave my executive career early on during COVID because one, I got very ill, and two, I had a death in my family. And it changed my perspective on how I could use my voice and what I wanted to do with the next, hopefully 30 years of my life in a very different way, and stepping out of my executive career, a very conscious choice, a risky one, however. And so the first question I will ask all of our attendees is, how do you find a way to get comfortable being uncomfortable? And I think that women and the men that support us, anyone who supports us, if we can get ourselves comfortable not knowing all the answers, being uncomfortable is really the first step to using our voice in a new way. Because using our voice in the old way will not create change, will not create opportunity. The next question I would ask, I know a lot of companies have built employee resource groups or employee communities to talk about lots of new issues that have come out of the pandemic. But if we surround ourselves in a resource group only with folks who are just like us, how do we then build a support network or a community that helps drive change? If there's a resource group of only women, we need to bring men into the conversation that support those women. And so I would challenge us to say that equality is in fact just equality. And it is about everyone bringing their voice to the table. And that will automatically promote women in driving the choice that is most important to them. I love the fact that Princess asked the question, are you happy? Do you feel that you're making a positive contribution, whatever that contribution is? Recently, I posted a blog about inclusion and how inclusion is very different than diversity, both important, and how also they are different from equality. All three of these often are misunderstood that they're the same thing. And in fact, they are very different things, equally important and intertwined. And another LinkedIn user posted, inclusion really begins at home and it begins in your community. Young people need to be taught about what inclusion means. And I think that, again, women who maybe make a choice to stay home, raising a family at some point during their life, imagine the power of a mother's voice to her children and that of her spouse or partner, etc., to children about how you can do anything you want in your life and in the world. If we're saying that from the very beginning, children will grow up believing, I did. My mother and father in my tiny little hometown in Kansas said to me, you can be and go and do anything you want. That came from my parents who were, not as educated, farmers, building a community of opportunity. And so I would just say that the travel sector certainly impacted by the pandemic, now creating a new kind of community that is available and open for women to come back to work in a more flexible way, whether that's from home, going to the office, different hours, different shifts, different places, creating a new community. I think we all have a responsibility to ask the right questions to create that new community that allows women to thrive, because thriving women are a force that is immeasurable. The importance of this for our future and the world we leave behind for our children now is the time to make that shift.
No, thank you very much, Gillian. I think you've touched so many points there. The fact that we need a heterogeneous and inclusive dialogue in society today is imperative to change. We cannot walk away from that, which is why I think the hashtag He for She campaign worked so beautifully. But then again, back to Princess, we all need to be there for each other as well, where She for She is also a huge movement for change. But that brings me, again, to the next question. How do we reaffirm participation of all parts of society to redesigning what society really needs to look like? When we say redesigning the role of women, it's not in isolation. It means redesigning the role of everybody in society. And that is going to be critical. How do we therefore motivate both people, men, women, non-binary? It doesn't matter. How do we get everyone together to move forward? And that is really the key. And what does forward really look like? Because that's a question again. Do we really want to keep moving forward, or do we want to go lateral? Do we want to do the salsa? And is that forward? And that is what I'd like to start with. Mukta, do you want to have a go?
Yes, definitely. What I feel is that all these things can happen when there are conversations between the various parties, various stakeholders. And as you said, stakeholders are everybody, so gender parity cannot happen if there are no men involved, anybody else, the LGBT plus, allies that we have, women themselves, and are women themselves willing to promote other women? I think that's a big question. And I've seen both. I've seen women who want to and who do it, and some who really don't want to because they want the exclusivity. So for me, I think this can only happen with really conversations which are happening on a regular basis. It cannot be ad hoc events, one-off events, etc. For me, for example, in an organization, it should be when we are talking about issues which women face at workplace, we bring it to light to the male members that we have, or other members that we have in our organization, because if they do not understand, it will be a big problem. And we also see that sometimes male members who are surrounded by women at home, they understand it much better than others. But if we don't bring it to light that there are really issues because of certain behaviors at workplace, it will never get sorted out. So for me, I think it's communication at every level. It should not be to senior management or to middle management. I think it's to everybody to say that speak up culture is important. We talk about the issues openly and what are the solutions for it, because I think talking about issues is one thing, but somebody has to also come up with the solution. And sometimes the solutions come from corners or from these kind of people who are not concerned with it, but they have an objective view because they maybe look at it from a very objective view from far off. So for me, I think this is what we can do, is to really bring it to the fore, and that's what we do in various forums within the organization. It's again not easy, but when we do it continuously, it becomes a way of life. So we have done it, like for example, for 7 years after we had our diversity council, set up in 2015. And I can tell you now, these topics are not alien. People know about it, and now we are finding solutions which are sustainable. I think this is what I feel happens, but you have to really continue hammering it. You need to have champions. You need to have people who don't get tired of talking about it, because once we lose momentum, I think it will fall off the radar. So that's my take, and that's what I have seen in real life in my organization.
No, thank you very much, Mukta. And I think, again, transparency and candor are so critical to change, because if we don't bring that to communication, then we've completely missed a massive trick. Thank you, Anura. I'd love to hear, given that all the, there's so much happening in the Middle East right now, especially with Iran being a big topic of discussion across the world. I'd love to hear your views on how we can help affect change in some of these places as well.
Well, this is quite a complex question, because where I come from, we have a lot of challenges apart from the corporate and institutional engagement with the gender issue. In 2015, we launched a gender balanced council in the Emirates to discuss this new alien concept, because it's quite unfamiliar to our social mindset. And there's another challenge we're facing here, and we've discussed it previously, and that's the fact that women do not welcome such positive change in redefining their roles, because of embedded messages that they've been growing up with about their identity. And this is something that I've been tackling with my anthropology, in which I've discovered that women often clash between the concepts of equality, gender, the needs of women in terms of establishing their own identity, and the needs of society. And I've noticed that the empowerment of women may be backed by the state, especially in the Arab Gulf region. But then at the level of society, acceptance has been conciliatory rather than based on a genuine belief in women's ability to participate. And with this in mind, women have been able to build a harmonious relationship with men without engaging in any form of conflict with them in society at large. And despite the support again given by the neo-patriarchal state, women have not been able to fulfill their potential and achieve full social recognition because of several reasons. First, there are no organizations of their own through which to make their own voices heard. That's in the Gulf state and Middle East level. Women have failed to occupy higher positions in the legislature field, where they would be able to participate in changing laws. And we've got a lot of issues in the family law, especially with marriage and transporting citizenship to your own children. And again, a women's path in Arab society usually is an individual one. It's not really a collective one. And these individual cases represent a special situation and are subject to unique social criteria. So when you go through your own experience, positive one, in which you can find a voice and an identity like myself through my academic work, or even personally as a woman trying to bargain with the patriarchs in the Emirates and in the Gulf, this is merely an individual rather than a collective set of experiences, and the lack of awareness among women in the Gulf about feminism and gender equality makes it quite difficult. We're not only talking corporate here, but in the social context of it.
I love how you ended that, Dr. Noura. I think that is so powerful. The fact that all of us at some level have had to bargain to be able to voice our thoughts, our beliefs, and push and champion for a cause. I think that is the most powerful thing that that we've managed to build. And I think we need a lot of this to be able to bargain and negotiate. No, thank you very much for that and for bringing that up. I'd really like to call upon Princess, who I'd love to hear from. How do we make this? How do we pivot, Princess?
Thank you very much. It resonated with me when Dr. Noura was speaking. Yeah. Being an African woman coming from a very traditional culture, as she was speaking, I was just giggling, and a few things she said that, just tickled me. It said the clash of the needs of the women. Yeah. Even as educated as I am, I have the clash of my needs. I'll take myself for an example. I'm from the southern part of Nigeria, where I'll speak for myself. I grew up in a family where we're the fourth or fifth generation of graduates, all professors and educationists, you know. So I grew up in an environment where I knew what education meant. I knew what speaking, I had a voice even from when I was younger. I was actually brought up with the, my father was a principal, you know, and we were brought up with such dedication and such preciseness, you know, prim and proper, to put it that way. So then growing up, I decided I've spent so much time in the South, I wanted to go to the North. And getting to the North, that was a totally different culture shock for me. Being a young girl coming from the South who can speak her mind, who there weren't any cultural barriers for me. Now having to discover myself in the North, where there's a certain way I have to talk as a woman, there's a certain way I have to dress as a woman, there's certain places I don't have to sit together with men, you know. So getting married to another man was one of the greatest challenges of my life as a woman, a very vocal and opinionated person. You understand? So when Dr. Nora was speaking, it just brought to light my clashes of needs. Do I want to be happy in my marriage to a northern man who traditionally expects their wives to be of a certain demeanor? And here I am all out there, sometimes with my red hair and my purple nails and my purple lipstick. And I look strange in the midst of these people. And they're wondering, who is this woman? Why is she coming to put an imbalance in, you know, in our perception of what a wife or a woman should look like? So in essence, what I'm saying is that for us to make the change, we need an understanding. We have to be strategic as women. And sometimes the question I wrote down here is, when Dr. Nora was speaking, when we speak, what are people hearing us? What is the message we're sending as women when we speak? Have we ever thought about that? Sometimes we're in the multitude of a noise where we say we have a voice, we're activists, we're advocating for this, we're advocating. What are we telling them? What are they hearing from us? What is the message we're sending? Are we sending the right message? Are we antagonistic in the way we're sending our messages? Or are the men hearing us clearly? Are we telling the men we don't want them to be part of our lives because we've been oppressed for so long? Or are we telling the world that, oh, we've come of age, we just want to do our things? Are we telling the world that we don't want to be part of the norms and values that society has put in place? So as women, we have to be very careful the message we're sending on the different platforms that we are manning. And if we're going to send a message that is going to create this change and make this impact, our message must be one. Our message cannot be fragmented. Our message must be inclusive. It will have diversity, but the message must be one. That at every corner of the world that they hear this message, it's one message. We want equality. We're not looking for exclusion. We're not fighting. We want to be happy. We want to discover ourselves as human beings first, before being wives, before being mothers. We want to know that we're human. And just as a man has desires to be president of a country, so do I, as a woman, want to be president of a country. You know, so as we gather together in different forums and all these conferences that we have, I think the women folks have not come together yet to agree on what our message is to the world or to the men. So we need to be strategic, and then the willingness, you know. So sometimes I'll end with this: that women, we must be willing to be one. We must be strategic in the ways we are addressing the 5 scourges that affect women globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Princess. And I think that that's very, very important. I'm sorry, it was such a fantastic conversation, but I think we're up for time. We've had some fabulous pieces of information, conversation that have come through, some that have actually resonated with, some deep experiences of our own. I was transported back to a time when I was the only girl in a market with men. My agency was men. The people I was speaking with was men. They were just men. There were no women in that market except for one little girl who stared at me because she thought I was really weird. I was wearing a pair of trousers, but I had to wrap my head. She thought I was half man, half woman. And she held my little finger. With her little finger, she held my finger. And she said, she tugged at it and I stared at her. And she, in her language, said, "Are you a girl?" So I sat halfway to meet her eye to eye and said, "Yes, and you can be me, or you can be anyone you want to be." But she had no one else to relate to because she couldn't. There were just men around. And I think that is the most important thing for all of us. Stand up. Actual, honest, sincere representation of what we can be and what we want to pass on to the next generation. But thank you very much for this opportunity, Neera, Shikha, and thank you very much for your honesty and sincerity, everyone on this panel today. It was absolutely fabulous. I've had a fabulous time hosting everyone and meeting everyone. But if you've got any other questions, please pass them on to Neera. We're going to pass the baton on to the next panel, which is beautifully #he for she, because we need them on side. But thank you. Over to you, Neera.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm sure a lot of people would have noticed this as well, that one of the interesting things about this panel was how diverse the group was, and not in terms of just geographic location, race, ethnicity, or professional backgrounds, but even in the views that everyone shared. And that really goes to show how this topic affects all of us in some way or the other, regardless of who we are and where we are. So thank you again, Divya, for moderating this session so beautifully. And thank you, Dr. Noura. Thank you, Kelly, Mukta, and Princess Nwakego for being part of this discussion and bringing your valuable insight to the topic. And of course, to all of our audiences, thank you so much for all those questions and comments coming through. And of course, if you'd like to connect with any of our panelists and moderator, their details have been shared on the chat. And of course, if you wanted to know a little bit more about the personal journey of Princess Nwakego and Dr. Noura, please grab a copy of the Amazon #1 bestseller book, My Voice, Volume 1 and Volume 5. Details are on the chat. And of course, do look out for Divya's story in My Voice, Volume 6, which will be released in Jan next year. But before you all ladies go, let's do a quick group photo. So got everyone's cameras on, okay. Oh, did someone leave? Oh, Mukta left. Oh dear, never mind. And another one. Let's break the bias. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies, for being here today.